Hello, my dear students. I hope you all are doing good. So, today we'll be starting off with your first chapter in advanced financial management, that is investment decisions and risk analysis. So, let's begin. Firstly, let's find out what is finance. Finance, as we all know, finance is the lifeblood of any business activity. Without adequate finance, no business can run effectively. Okay, so finance is the most important aspect in case if you want to see your business grow rapidly, and also if you want to achieve higher profits, higher returns. Finance is very important for your day-to-day working of the operations. So, when you talk about finance, you will also have something known as investment decisions. So, what is investment? Investment is nothing but you are investing. Okay, it is a certain sum of money that you are investing. Suppose, for example, if you have a business, so without investing your money, it is very impossible for the business to run, right? So that is nothing but it is investment. Now when you are investing, you will have certain amount of risk to ensure if whatever you're investing your money is, if your money is safe, if it is safe to invest in that particular project. Suppose, for example, if you want to buy gold, you are investing in gold, right? So the gold prices may increase or decrease. If the gold prices are increasing, your investment is very profitable, but whereas it is decreasing, your investment is a sort of kind of providing you a loss in case if you're planning to sell that particular gold. Okay, so now let's look into the chapter risk analysis. So, to begin with the introduction, risk analysis. What is risk analysis? In general meaning, it is analyzing your risk. In analyzing your risk in what? Risk analysis in capital budgeting. Okay, in terms of capital budgeting, it bears a substantial degree of importance in the field of corporate finance. So, in field of corporate finance, risk analysis has a certain degree of importance. Now, when does the risk arise? Risk arises in project evaluation. So, for example, you will have in a company, you will have various projects. Okay, it is, for example, project A, project B, project C, and these three projects will have different kinds of investment. Suppose project A has rupees 50 as investment, project B has rupees 30 as investment, project C has rupees 10 as investment. So you have different investment. So for these three projects, you will have different return also, and also different level of risk which will be involved. So risk arises in project evaluation, your different projects, because the firm cannot predict the occurrence of possible future events. Correct, right? And I think you all agree with me, because we do not know what the future holds. Suppose I am investing even in project C of rupees 10. Suppose tomorrow there might be any occurrence, any uncertain event which might occur. So I might think that 10 rupees is a less investment, and I will be able to generate greater return. Why to invest more? Because of the uncertainties. No, that is a wrong concept. You need to check the investment of the project, and you need to calculate the payback period. Like within a particular period of time, what is the return? Then in how many months of time will I get back my return? What is the risk involved? All of that you need to see, and you should also be very well prepared for uncertain events which will come in the future, because uncertainties cannot be avoided, right? So you should also have certain measures, like suppose it could be any political issue which will be arising in the future. So the firm should have an alternative to overcome this particular event. It should not let this particular event influence their returns, okay, and influence their investment. So risk arises in project evaluation because the firm cannot predict the occurrence of possible future events. But whereas if the firm is able to predict in a certain way, okay, suppose if they are able to forecast, if they check their forecast, they can avoid the risk, they can mitigate the risk to a certain extent. Now, for example, a company wants to produce and market new products. So what is the company wanting to do? It wants to produce and market a new product to their prospective customers. The demand is affected by the general economic conditions. For example, you can take the present day situation of the farmers as well. Okay, so these farmers issue can also affect our business, our company, because if you see continuous strikes day in and day out, you will not be able to open the company, and all of these factors will be affecting our business. Now demand may be very high if country experiences higher economic growth. Yes, this is true. Okay, now every business decisions involve risk. I think it's a fact by now. Through my explanation and introduction, you would have understood that every business has certain amount of risk. Even our lives for in person, even we are subjected to a lot of risk. Okay, as humans also we are subjected to a lot of risk. So this is a business, so even business decisions involve risk. Now risk arises out of uncertain conditions. Now here you will not know, like whether this investment or anything for that matter, you will not be able to predict from where the risk is arising. In certain situations, yes, you can predict, whereas in certain situations you will not be able to predict. So in uncertain conditions under which a firm has to operate its activities. Now because of the inability of the firms to forecast accurately the cash flow of future operations, the firms face the risk of operations. So if suppose for example, if you have an organization of your own, but whereas you have a proper management, okay, you have a proper management wherein you are able to forecast effectively, you are able to check your cash inflows, your cash outflows, then you will be able to carry out the operations effectively, and also you will be able to elevate that risk. But whereas if you're not able to do that, then in terms of that you will have to face a lot of risk. Okay, now let's move on to the topic risk. Now what is risk? As we spoke a lot about it, now what is risk? Risk is nothing but it occurs when the probability of future outcome is unknown. This is the general meaning. Risk will only occur when you do not know the probability of the future outcome, where the future outcome is unknown. Okay, now risk is also the potential that a chosen action or activity, including the choice of inaction, will lead to loss of an undesirable outcome. For example, okay, suppose now what you can do is basically here for example, it could be a combination of hazardous measures or by probability. It is nothing but it is an uncertain event, right? So you do not know where the risk is arising from. So what you can do is, for risk you can refer to your Word document wherein I have given you a simple meaning of risk. That is nothing but it occurs when probability of future outcome is unknown. That is known as risk. Now, according to Irving Fisher, okay, risk is defined as a combination of hazards measured by probability. You will study about probability in the further topics. Probability, okay, you will be studying about it in the later topics. So he is telling that risk can be defined, okay, as a combination of what? Combination of hazards. Now what is hazard? It is any uncertain events. It could be political, social, it could be environmental factors. So it is a combination of hazards. These hazards are measured by probability. Okay, and also Warren Buffett is defining risk, wherein risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Very important. Okay, you should always know what you are doing. Suppose if you are unknowingly investing in a particular project without reading all the terms and conditions, without finding out what the return is, so if you're doing this, risk is very certain. You will face certain amount of risk. But whereas if you know what you're doing, if you know where you're investing, if you've done every possible things, you can mitigate the risk up to a certain extent. I'm not telling no business faces risk. Every business will face risk. No matter how much you forecast, no matter what you do, they will face a certain amount of risk. But if you're taking a proper study, if you're getting into a proper detailed investigation and everything, you will be able to avoid the risk up to a certain extent. So what is Warren Buffett telling? Warren Buffett says risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. Okay, similarly, Emmett J. Wahang is also defining risk as a condition in which there is possibility of adverse deviation from a desired outcome that is experienced or hoped so far. For all these definitions, you can head through the Word document which I've sent you on your WhatsApp group. You can check the Word documentations for the document for the definitions. Okay, now next let's move on to what is risk and uncertainty. Risk and uncertainty is nothing but these two are together. Okay, risk is something which you cannot avoid. Okay, and also risk starts from the time you start off the company till the time you end or wind up the company. Till then risk is there. It's like the birth to the death of the company. From the time it is born till the time it dies, there is a risk. Then evaluation of risk is both internal and external. What is internal and external? I think by now you will know what is internal environment, what is external environment. You need to analyze the internal environment of the organization as well as the external environment of the organization to see how much there is risk and how much of uncertainty is there in the organization. So now next let's move on to risk analysis. What is analysis of risk? Risk analysis, it is nothing but you are analyzing your risk. Risk analysis here refers to uncertainty of forecasted future cash flow, that is streams of variance. Portfolio. What is portfolio? You are see, for example, you have for example, I will give you an example of the egg. Okay, so you are not pulling in all eggs into one basket, because you know if you put all eggs in one basket, there are chances to break. Whereas if you put the eggs in different trays, the chances of breaking is less, right? So that is portfolio. You're not putting every investment in just one project. Whereas you're investing in different projects, you're not investing only in one project. Okay, this is known as portfolio. Or stock returns, statistical analysis to determine the probability of project success or failure and possible future. What are you doing? You're analyzing risk by checking what are the projects available, how to invest in different projects, what are the different rate of returns, what is the probability of risk, everything. When you're doing this, the chance of failure is less, while when you don't do it, the chance of failure is more. Okay, when you are probably doing all of that, you will see a positive outflow. Okay, you will see a future, you will be able to generate a positive outcome. But when you don't do it, you will generate a future negative unforeseen effects. Okay, because of that, it'll be your return will be affected a lot. So here there is a beautiful example which says commercial banks need to. So now let's move on to the next topic, which is the nature of risk. What is the nature of risk? Now, nature of risk, in your nature of risk, you already know what is a risk, right? Risk is nothing but, okay, risk is nothing but it occurs when the probability of future outcome is unknown. That is the meaning of risk. And also how you choose a particular activity. Based on that, there is a risk, which is occurring. Now you need to know what is the nature of risk. You will have various categories of the nature of risk, that is under general economic conditions, under industry factors, under company factors. Now before you understand the nature of risk, let me tell you there are always two factors that are affecting. One is your internal factor, one is your external factor. Your internal factors are nothing but the factors which are within the particular organization, which could be an element of risk to you. It could be your employees, it could be your improper cash flow, you're not able to conduct the operations properly, or poor decision making, or management, it could be any problems in the management. These could be your internal factors. Whereas your external factors are your, always remember something known as PESTEL, that is political, social, economical, technological, social. All these factors are your external factors which will be affecting your business. Okay, now to study the nature of risk, you need to understand under terms of general economic condition. Now in general economic condition, this category includes events which influence general level of business activity. Okay, it is including general level of business activity. The level of business activity might be affected by such events as internal and external. So general economic conditions is a combination of internal, external, economic and political situations. Okay, first is your economic, second is your political, third is your monetary, it is your money. okay, and your fiscal policies. I hope you all know what is fiscal policies. It is your customs duty, your tax duty, and your social conditions. So general economic condition is nothing but it is a category of risk which is a combination of both internal and external factors, okay. For example, economic, political, monetary, fiscal policies, and social conditions, or else you can mention it as social, political, legal, technological, environmental, all these factors. Next is industrial factors. Industry factors. The industry factor is an external factor, okay, which affects the events of the company. For examples, companies in an industry would be affected by industrial relations. Very true. Industrial relation is nothing but, okay. Now let's move on to the next nature of risk, that is your industry factors. Now industry factor is completely an external factor, okay. Industry, it could be your steel industry, it could be your iron industry, it could be, you have various industries, right? And you also know these industries maintain certain relationships amongst them. So how is there a risk from this industry factors? Now if suppose one steel industry does not maintain good relations with the other industry, then you'll have something known as a problem of industrial relations. You should always maintain good industrial relations if you want your business or your industry to be successful, and also if you want to achieve a greater market share. But suppose if the industrial relations are not good, okay, then there is a chance of risk that is arising, okay. For example, companies in industry would be affected by the industrial relations in the industry in terms of innovation, change in material, which is costing, etc. Okay, these are certain examples. Next is the company factors. Now your company factor, it could be any internal factor which is affecting the company, or it could be an external factor which is affecting the company. So this category of nature of risk, or the category of events may only affect the company, okay. This category of events may affect only a company. It is only affecting the company and not an industry at large. Industry is a group of companies, whereas company is individual. Now, what is the company factors? As I told you all, company is completely internal. So it is either the change in management, or it can be the strike in company. Strike in company, by who can do the strike in company? It is the employees. When the employees are not taken care properly, when the employees are not paid salaries on time, so the employees might go and against the company and say, and they can create a strike in the company, through which the operations might start and the company will have to suffer a huge loss. Then it could be a natural disaster such as flood, or it could be a fire breakout in the company, which can directly or indirectly affect the company. So I hope it's clear to you all. In nature of risk, you need to remember these three elements or three categories. That is your general economic condition, combination of both internal and external factors. Industry factors, which is a complete external factor. It is due to the industrial relations. If you do not have proper industrial relations, then industry factor might come into existence. And next is company factor. It is a complete internal factor. It could happen because of a strike in company, or sometimes it is affected by the external factor also, which is like flood. Example that is flood. Now let's move on to the next topic, that is importance of risk. Why is risk so important? Because risk is very important, because by now we should know risk is something that cannot be eliminated. Okay, no matter how much you plan, no matter how good your company is doing, risk is something that you cannot eliminate from your business, neither from your business nor from your personal lives as well, because everything is very uncertain. Everything, we do not know what the future holds, right? So we need to be very practical and logical. So we need to know, neither in our personal lives, neither in terms of business, in no ways can we eliminate risk. Okay, now how are you going to identify the risk? What is the process? This is the process. Okay, suppose an example, if they ask you what is the process of risk, you need to write identify the risk. Okay, now suppose the risk has occurred in your organization, suppose something has gone wrong, identify it. Next, evaluate it. Next, after identifying and evaluating, identify, evaluate, take certain measures to control it. After you've taken measures and you've implemented in your organization, after you've eliminated that risk, continuously keep reviewing, so that that particular event which has created a problem does not happen again in the future. So you need to take possible measures. So you're identifying, evaluating, controlling, and reviewing risk to make sure that the organization is exposed to only those risks that it needs to take to achieve its primary objective. This is known as risk management. How is risk management? You are identifying, you are evaluating, controlling, reviewing risk to make sure the organization is only experiencing or only exposed to those risks that it needs to take. Okay, needs to take. Why does it need to take? To achieve the primary objectives. So this is known as risk management. And also risk management is a proactive process and not a reactive process. It is a proactive process and not a reactive process. Okay, this is something which is important and you need to keep in mind. Now in terms of risk, you need to understand these points. Okay, risk is something that cannot be eliminated, right? However, risk can be transferred. Okay, risk can be transferred from one party who suppose I hope you're all aware that in terms of industrial relations, I think you've studied by now collective bargaining, and also when you enter into contracts, there are two parties in an agreement and all of that. I hope you are in final year and you're aware of it by now. There are always two parties in an agreement on all of that, right? So in terms of that, your risk can be transferred to another party. Suppose there are two parties in a contract. Okay, now there are two parties in a contract. So one party has faced risk. Suppose they want to transfer it to the second party, and if the second party is willing to take that particular risk, okay, say you can do that by buying an insurance policy or entering into a forward contract. Now what is a forward contract? Very important. Forward contract is basically a contract wherein you agree to pay, suppose now there are two parties in an agreement, that is a buyer and a seller. Now the seller wants to buy goods from suppose A. Okay, A and B. Suppose the buyer wants to buy the goods from the seller but is not ready to pay the amount right now. So it is a risk to the buyer, right? Suppose you're not very sure that he might pay the amount right now. I mean, if he will be able to pay the amount in the future date also. So what you will do is you will enter into a forward contract. Okay, that is, you agree to give the goods now or in a future date. You're entering into a forward contract wherein you say you pay the amount on that particular time and take the delivery then. For example, a mango garden. Suppose there is a person who has for example, there's a mango garden, right? So what you're doing is basically there is a seller of the mango and there is a buyer of the mango. Now it is a mango season and mangoes are growing. So the seller will come to the buyer will come to the seller and he will say, I need certain amount of mangoes, but then I will be able to pay you only on the future date. So the person says that, okay, fine, I will supply you the mangoes at a future date. So they will enter into a forward contract wherein they are supplying also on a future date and also payment is done on a future date. This is wherein you are transferring risk to another party wherein the party they themselves are willing to take that particular risk. Okay, now next is after transferred the risk to another party, next is reduced. Okay, reduced by having good internal controls. Very important, as I told you all, you are reducing the risk by having good internal controls, wherein your organization is very organized and you have good employees in the organization and everything. You are reducing the risk. Avoided. Okay, you can either transfer, you can either reduce it. Next is avoided. How are you avoiding? By not entering into risky businesses. Very important, you should always analyze it and not enter into any risky businesses. Next is retained. Risk can be retained. to either avoid the cost of trying. Okay, see, when you're trying to reduce the risk, there is certain amount of cost which is implemented, and whether which is there. Okay, you cannot do anything without spending money, or everything is cost. Okay, so you are trying to reduce the risk or anticipation of higher profits by taking on more risk. You can completely retain the risk. Okay, if you do not want to incur any extra cost to reduce the risk, you can retain it. Next one is shared. Okay, just like transferred, you can share the risk by following a middle path between retaining and transferring. Okay, you can either retain the risk and transfer the risk, or either there is a middle path wherein you can completely retain it or you can completely share it. That is, both the parties will agree to share the risk equally. Okay, so that the complete burden of risk does not fall on the other party. So similarly, just like as we studied the thing, just like transport, reduce, avoided, retain, and shared, you will also be coping with the challenge of risk management. The following interrelated guidelines should be considered. Now, how do you cope up with the risk management? You need to follow certain guidelines. That is, you need to understand. First one is understanding, employing, proactively managing, aligning, learning. Now, what are you understanding? Understanding your firm's strategic exposure, to what extent your firm is exposed to risk, and how are the strategies of the firm. Strategies are nothing but the tricks which are used by the firms in order to cope up with the competitor. Okay, next one is you're employing what? Employing a mix of real and financial tools. Okay, real and financial. It is not bookish knowledge, it is the real tools. I mean, your real strategies that you need to employ. That is a mix of real and financial tools. Okay, there are various financial tools like payback period, you have internal rate of return. You will come across it in the future topics. Next one is proactively managing uncertainty. You should be very proactive in managing your uncertainties. You should be prepared. Okay, you should be prepared in case of any uncertain events also. Next, you're aligning risk management with corporate strategy. What is a corporate strategy? Every organization will have a particular strategy with them. Okay, this particular different organizations will have different strategies. So you need to align certain amount of risk. Suppose you have various corporate strategies. Okay, suppose your advertising is good. If it is an advertisement company, your cost, the managing of your cost is very good, but you will also make sure know that, okay, fine, even if I'm managing my cost effectively, there is a certain amount of risk along with it. So you are aligning your risk management with the corporate strategy. Next, learning when it is worth reducing risk. Okay, you need to continuously update yourself with the various techniques, everything which are coming up, and it should be also worth to reduce the risk. Now, managing your risk is very important. Okay, it is not just it comes next only to minimizing borrowing cost and maintaining or improving the firm's credit. As you all know, being finance students, it is very important to maintain a credit worthiness of the organization, because that is the only thing which shows if the company is doing good or if the company is not doing good. Because if your credit position is not good, if your financial position is not good, then no one will come to you and no one will even want to have a deal with your particular company. Okay, you can also hedge the risk. Okay, hedge the risk, this will be studied in the future thing, and I will also give you the meaning of what is known as hedging. Now, next you have the types of risk. There are various types of risk which you will be seeing in the next video. Until then, thank you girls. I hope you all have understood, and in case of any doubts, please get back to me.